Hello, today Daniel and I will talk about RMB management in the context of China's restricted currency translations. It becomes particularly important to study the evolution of the Chinese yuan since its growth in recent decades. Although China's commitment to financial reforms and capital account opening, the RMB still faces limitations to become a fully global trade, investment, and reserve currency. Here we will have an overview of the Chinese yuan evolution throughout time. From 1949 until the late 70s, the state fixed China's exchange rate at an overvalued level to accelerate the industrial development. On this period, only few state-owned companies were involved in international trade. With the opening up of China, a dual-track currency system was instituted, with renminbi usable only domestically and with foreign visitors to use foreign exchange certificates. In the 80s, the government launched a swap center market in large cities to control the dual-track system, which allowed the currency to freely float. In 1994, the government introduced an internal settlement rate as an effort to make the swap market to converge to the fixed price. In 2009, the starting point of the internationalization was seen as banks in Hong Kong started to offer renminbi deposit taking and currency exchanges. Shortly after, in 2010, the offshore renminbi arose in Hong Kong. Before 2009, the government prohibited almost all use of the currency in international transactions. Trades between Chinese companies and foreign entities were generally dominated in USD, and all transactions had to go through the People's Bank of China. In April 2010, a pilot scheme was launched with which businesses were able to settle CNY transactions in few big cities, in any of the major currencies without the need of the USD. In 2011, the RQFII and the QDFII program were introduced, which allowed foreign investors who hold a license to directly invest in mainland China's capital markets and vice versa for Chinese companies. In 2016, the yuan became the first emerging market currency to be included in the International Monetary Fund's special drawing right basket. To illustrate in more detail, we have two currency areas. First, we have the onshore yuan, CNY, which operates only in mainland China and is restricted by government policies, as we said previously. On the other hand, we have the offshore yuan, CNH, which was initially launched in Hong Kong and then it was spread throughout 20 different hubs all around the world. This CNH follows the CNY to some extent, but it's mainly driven by market fluctuations.
Now we'd like to talk about the perspective of a European company that has straight cash flows from and to China and a rated currency exposure. As you can see here, under the RMB trade settlement scheme, several forms of payments are allowed. For example, a new exporter can get invoiced or can invoice buyer in China and can get paid in CNY. But their requirements are, for example, the presentation of several invoices or contracts and the eligibility for the scheme. On the other hand, there are still payment forms that are not allowed, for example, payments for personal purposes. And with regards to companies that are not under the settlement scheme, they can still use the CNH, so they can settle their payments in offshore yuan using clearing banks in their offshore hubs. With regards to hedging RMB-related exposure, there are mechanics that have to be kept in mind. First of all, there's the CNY-CNH basis spread, as the CNH floats freely against other currencies. And in the forward market, there are three different forward curves, the CNY, CNH forward curve, and also the non-deliverable forward curve. An NDF is a contract in which there's no physical delivery of the currency. Instead, it is settled in a convertible currency like the euro, the difference between the spot price at maturity and the strike price. Lastly, there's also the USD-CNY correlation, especially in former times, for example, the Euro-CNY was super correlated to Euro-US dollar. Nowadays, it's only 0.5%. With regards to the hedging strategies, there are several in the onshore and offshore market. A simple one would be in the onshore market, the natural hedge, just net payments with invoices from your suppliers to have both positions. In former times, as the yuan was pegged to the dollar, the proxy hedge would also be a simple one to just hedge the euro-dollar risk, for example, and leave the dollar-yuan risk open. Of course, the non-deliverable forwards. In comparison, in the offshore markets, you could use FX cash instruments and almost all derivatives, ranging from plain vanilla instruments to complex derivatives. Yeah, finally, these slides summarizes what we just said. We have the onshore and the offshore markets with the different derivatives that are tradable in the markets and the interconnection. As we mentioned, there's the RQFI program, for example, or the RMB trade settlement agreements. Recently, derivatives markets open up more with the establishment of Circular 159 that allows foreign investors to access onshore derivatives and hedge against RMB risk. Furthermore, on its way to becoming one of the most traded currencies in the world, the US intervenes and slows down the process on the one hand, but on the other hand, the US also pushes China to open up more.
Last but not least, on late 2019, the government introduced a project of a digital RMB, which is expected to increase the global transaction volume of the currency. Thank you for your attention.